everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this bracelet with the newest treasure bags, Sunrise and Sunset Autumn Showcase bags. Now this one is done with the Sunrise color scheme, and I'm going to show you how to make it. It's very, very pretty. Let me take this off. I used a fold over clasp on this one, but you can use the clasps in the bags too. And I discuss other beads you can use, so if you do not have the treasure bags, you will have something in your stash that works, because there are several or there are a couple alternatives for the beads in this particular bracelet. So if you can see just how pretty each unit is, when you put it on your arm, the little squares separate and you can see the pretty pearls in between. This is what the back looks like. We get you a little closer. This is what the front looks like. And let me see if I put it against this darker background, if you can see it a little better. It turns out really pretty. So that's what that looks like. And we are going to go ahead and look at the material list and get started. Okay, for this project today, we are going to be using some of the beads found in the newest treasure bags, which was the Autumn Showcase, either Sunrise or Sunset. There's two color schemes. I will show you the beads that I'm using in both color schemes, but I'm only going to make one bracelet in one of the color schemes today. And I believe these are the beads that I'm using are in the Sunrise, but I'll also show you the Sunset, and they'll work just as beautifully. So what we're going to be using are, these are a 5.5 by 4 millimeter column bead. You also have a 6.5 by 4 millimeter column bead in your treasure bag. However, we want to use the shorter ones. In Sunrise, it's this light topaz color, and in Sunset, it is this peachy color. So you will use either this strand or this strand, depending upon the bag you have. Then we're going to be using some 4 millimeter round. You have a big long strand of 4 millimeter round glass pearls. In Sunset, it's this color. In Sunrise, it is this color. So you will be using a 4 millimeter round bead. Now, these column beads, I don't expect everyone to have them in their stash, and I know that this video will get to more people than just have the treasure bags. So what I have done is I have made an alternative weave here with this green one is a fire polish bead, a 4 millimeter fire polish bead, and these ones, these light topaz color ones, or caramel, this is caramel, are the 4 by 4 by 4 cuboid crystals. So you can do this with other beads. You can use a 4 millimeter bicone too. That should work just fine. So you do not have to have these column beads. However, I have ordered more, and I'm going to have them in several colors on my website. I do have some column beads on there now, but they're like a 6 by 4. And you really want the 5.5 by 4 or a 4 millimeter bead to do this. It just works better. You don't have to alter anything that I show you in order to change out to this size of bead. So you can use a 4 millimeter bicone, or these 4 millimeter fire polish beads, or a 4 millimeter cuboid. So that will all work. Okay, then I'm going to add to the bag everything else. So we're going to use a combination of seed beads with this. I have an 8/0, and it is antique bronze Toho. And then I have an 11/0 and a 15/0 also in the antique bronze Toho. Then I have an 11/0 and a 15/0 in the Toho Starlight color. So you will need two colors of 11/0, or excuse me, two colors of 11/0, two colors of 15/0, and an 8/0. I've chosen these colors because I think they work really nicely together. Bronze and gold works really well together. Plus, I have decided I am going to use one of these fold-over clasps for this, just because it turns out pretty fancy, and I think this will complement it. You can use any clasping you would like. Lobster claw would work really well, but also a toggle clasp, one of them that are in the bag, will work just fine too. So then once you have all your beads established, then we are going to be using 6-pound Fireline. You can also use 8 or 10-pound Nanofil, but don't go any larger in Fireline. You want to stay with the 6-pound because we're sewing through these beads a lot. And then I'm using a size 12 John James beading needle. So that is what you're going to need. You're going to put on your needle to start about a wingspan or 4.5 to 5 feet of thread onto your needle. You will need to extend your Fireline during this process, so there will be a link for a video that will show you how to do that in the description box beneath the video player. So let's go ahead and get everything together and we'll get started. Okay, to start this project, you're going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead. Mine is the bronze. And then I'm going to pick up an 11/0 in gold. And then I'm going to pick up one of my 4mm round pearls. And then I am going to pick up an 11/0 in gold, an 8/0 in bronze, an 11/0 in gold, and a pearl. And these little pearls are kind of hard to pick up, so I hope you guys have patience with me. They just are hard to pick up. And then an 11/0. And this is what I have. So let me get you in close here. We have an 8/0, an 11/0, a 4mm round, an 11/0, an 8/0, an 11/0, a 4mm round, and an 11/0. Then we are going to bring this to the end of our thread. You don't have to leave a long tail, but enough to tie a knot with. And then you're just going to go back up into the 8/0 seed bead that you first put on your thread. So from the tail side, we're going to go up into the 8/0. And we're going to pull our thread through, holding onto that 8/0 and holding onto your tail. So this is what you have now. We're going to sew back through all of these beads until we get back to where our tail and working thread meet. So I'm going to go from the 8/0 into the 11/0 purl 11/0, and I'm going to pull my thread through. Then I'm going to go into this 8/0 on its own because I want to establish a form here. And my thread got caught, sorry guys. And then I'm going to sew up through the 11/0 purl 11/0 on this side. I'm going to pull myself just a little bit more tail through this, and then I'm going to tie a knot with my tail and my working thread because I'm right where the two of them meet. So I'm just going to tie a little overhand knot, and then I'm going to tie one more just to make sure that my unit will stay steady for me while I work with it. So this is what I have now. Now we are coming out where the knot is, so we need to go up into this 8/0 seed bead right next to where we're coming out. We're going to put on our clasping, so I'm going to open my little fold over clasp here and take one end off because it's just easier to do that way. And now I know the dome side has to be up, so I am going to sew that on, and then later I can attach the rest of the clasp. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up an 11/0 and then my bronze 8/0. So I'm using my gold 11/0 and my bronze 8/0, and I'm going to drop it down to my piece. Then I'm going to come up through the loop of my clasp. So no matter what clasp you're using, just go up through the loop of it, bring it down to your piece. and then go through the 8/0 seed bead and just the 8/0. Hold on to that 8/0 and pull your thread through. Now I need to pick up another 11/0 seed bead and go into the opposite side of the 8/0 I started in. So I'm going to go into this 8/0 right here and pull my thread through. Now I'm going to sew through this 2 times more just to make sure that it is nice and secure. So I'm coming from the 8/0 up into the 11/0, up into the 8/0, and then into my clasp loop, just like this. I'm going to hold on to my little unit that I'm creating and pull my thread through. Give a little tug, make sure my clasp is the right way, and then I'm going to go back down into the 8/0 and the 11/0 on the other side. Then I'm going to go into the 8/0 seed bead. Now, one thing I've noticed with this entire project is it is really fumbly. So if I drop it a lot, I'm really sorry. When I was designing, I was like, this is crazy. I'm dropping this continually. I'm going to turn it over so my clasp is the right way. And I'm just going to go ahead and sew up through this one more time just to make sure that it's nice and secure. So I'm going through my 11/0, my 8/0, and let's see if I can go through the clasp too. Yes. And then I'll go back down into the 8/0, and since it's getting kind of tight against the clasp, I'm just going to pull through that 8/0 and then go into the 11/0 on the other side from which I started. Come here, you little 11/0. And then pull my thread through, and then I'm going to go through the 8/0 that I'm attaching to. Now, this is what I have. Just like that. So now we're going to sew all the way around this unit just to make sure it's secure because it is our starting unit. So I am going to go ahead and go into all the beads. And as I do this, I am going to make sure that I go through the 8/0 on the bottom by itself so I can kind of pull it out. So as I go through it, I'll just kind of pull it out and away from the 11/0s a little bit, just because that's where I start my next unit. So I want it to be kind of out by itself. And as I sew back through, I'm not going to pull so hard that I draw that back in. So I'm going to go up through this 11/0, purl 11/0, and then I'm going to go through the 8/0 in the middle here that we've attached our clasping to, right there. And then I'm going to sew back down the other side so I can get to that 8/0 on the bottom and start my actual units. Now I'm going to go through this 8/0, pull it back down because I popped it up, and this is where we're going to start the squares. Now, this particular project has a lot of steps. I do not recommend it for your very first project if you're a very beginner. However, if you think it looks like something you can navigate, then I say go for it. But you may want to get a little bit of practice before you actually tackle this one. So now we're going to pick up 3 8/0 seed beads. We're coming out of the 8/0 here on this side. We're going to go into the opposite side of the 8/0 that our thread is coming out of. And we're going to pull this down into a little unit of right angle weave like this. Then we're going to sew back around this right angle weave to secure it, because if you do not, it's going to be messy, it's not going to hold together, and your next few steps will be difficult. So just sew each bead individually all the way around until you're into the top bead. And I say individually because it helps hold the shape of the unit if you do it that way. Now you're coming out of the top 8-0 here. I'm going to call this one the top because it's toward my clasp. I'm going to pick up a 4mm pearl, and I'm coming out of this side of this 8-0. I'm going to go into the opposite 8-0 on the opposite side. So I'm stitching in a diagonal here, and I'm going to pull this pearl up over this unit, and then I'm going to hold on to the pearl and the 8-0s, and I'm just going to tug to make sure it's on there nice and tight. Now I'm coming out of this 8-0, I'm going to go into this side 8-0 right here. And make sure between each one, you just kind of tighten your unit, because at this point it kind of moves around. Now, you're coming out of the 8-0 seed bead, you're going to pick up 3 15-0 seed beads, and this time I'm using my bronze 15-0s. And then I'm going to pick up one of my crystals, and then I am going to pick up 3 more 15-0s. I'm going to go into the opposite side of the bead I'm coming out of. And I'm going to pull this down around that 8-0 seed bead. Now it doesn't lay nice and neat, so we're going to sew back through it. So you're going to have to go up through these 15-0s, and like I said, this is a fidgety project, so I'm going to try to do it nice and neat for you, but I don't know. Up through the 3 15-0s here, and I'm going to pull this thread through. Then I'm going to go through the crystal, and then I'm going to go through the 15-0s. Now your 8-0 unit may pull apart a little bit. We'll sew around it to make sure that it comes back together. But don't be too concerned about it. Now go back down into the 15-0s on the other side of the crystal. And then into the 8-0 that you're connecting to, right here. Get my tail out of the way and pull this down. Now you can see my unit's kind of falling apart. I'm coming from this 8-0, I'm going to go into this 8-0 here, and as I come through, I'm going to give a nice little tug and tighten that bottom unit up again, so it pulls everything together. And now you can see I have my right angle weave with a little crystal coming off of one side. Now I'm in the top 8-0 here that we attached our clasping to. I am now going to go into the side 8-0 on this side of the unit and do the same thing. So I'll pick up 3 15-0 seed beads, a crystal, and 3 15-0s. And I'm just going to go into the opposite side of the 8-0 I'm coming out of and pull this down. Now they don't sit nice and arrange nice until you sew back through them. So we're coming out of the 8-0, we're going to go up into these 3 15-0 seed beads, just like this. I'm going to hold on to it with my thumb and fingers so that I can make sure I can tug that down and keep control of it. Then I'm going to go through the crystal. Then I'm going to go through the 15-0s on this side. Then I'm going to go back into the 8-0 I'm attaching the crystal to. And then I'm going to go back up into the 15-0s and back into the crystal. So I'm coming out of this 8-0 after doing a complete secure on that unit, and then I'm going to go up through the 15-0 seed beads here, pull it through, make sure everything's nice and secure. This is what it should look like. Now we're going to go up into this crystal right here. We are going to pull this through, and then we're going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, and I'm going to use my bronze 11-0s. So I'm going to pick up an 11-0, and then I'm going to pick up another crystal and an 11-0. Oops, Come here, Crystal. Like this. Now, I'm coming out of this crystal. Let me back off just slightly. And I am going to cross over into this crystal and go through it on the same side I'm coming out of this one. So I'm going to go straight over like this. And I'm going to pull these 3 beads down between the crystals on the unit already, just like that. Then I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead and a crystal and an 11-0 seed bead. And I'm going to cross over into the crystal on this side, just like this. And I'm going to pull this through. And you will see it's wobbly, it's weird, it's not great. We're going to sew all the way around this and secure it. So we're coming out of this crystal, we'll go into the 11-0 and the crystal here. I'm going to turn it and then go into the 11-0 crystal here. And I'm going to give a little tug to tighten it up. Then I'm going to go through this 11-0, this crystal, and this 11-0 here. I hold on to my unit like this. I know you can't see it, but it helps secure everything. And I recommend you do that too. Coming out of this 11-0, I'm going to go into this crystal, this 11-0, and back into the top crystal. And then we're going to finish up the corners with 15-0 seed beads. So I'm going to switch to my gold now. I'm going to pick up 3 15-0 seed beads. You can do this all in one color too. You don't have to have all the colors I have. I just wanted to mix the gold and bronze together. I'm coming from this crystal. I'm going to skip over this 11-0 and go into the next crystal and avoid the 11-0 on the other side of it. Just like that. I'm going to pull my thread and wrap those 15-0s around the 11-0 in the corner. And again, pick up 3 15-0s, go into the next crystal, going over or just ignoring the 11-0. And then when you pull them in, it will wrap them nicely around that 11-0. Pick up 3 15-0 seed beads and do the same thing again. Skipping over that 11-0, going into the crystal, pull it nice and tight, and then pick up 3 more 15-0s. Skip over this 11-0 and go into the crystal. Let's see if I can get positioned a little better here. Okay, so I'm coming out of the crystal now and pull this down. And this is where I'm at. Now I'm going to go into this 11-0 and the crystal behind it and avoid all the 15-0s and 11-0s on the other side of the crystal. So you see I accidentally went through a 15-0. I am just going to back out, push that 15-0 out of the way, and just come through the crystal, just like this. And we want to be coming out of one of these side crystals because in order to get back down to our right angle weave and make our next unit, we need to go into these 3 15-0s that are connecting this crystal. So we're coming out of this crystal, we're going to guide our thread between the crystal and the 15-0, the gold one, and then we're going to go into the 3 bronze 15-0s right here. So just turn your unit over, come up through those. Now, once you're in there, just pull everything nice and tight. And then go into the 8-0 right over the bottom crystal here. So we've got our pearls up here. We're coming out of the very bottom 8-0. We're going to pull on this. And then we're going to make another extension like this between each unit. So it's easier to see what I'm doing if I just stay with my piece upside down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a 4mm round pearl, an 11-0, and I'm using gold. And then I'm going to pick up a bronze 8-0, a gold 11-0, and my 4mm pearl and a gold 11-0. So this is what I have. 11-0 pearl, 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 pearl, 11-0. It looks a little blurry. Let's back off a little here. And then we're coming out of this 8-0 on the back of the unit here. We're just going to go into the opposite side of that 8-0, and just the 8-0, avoid all the other beads on either side, and pull this unit into a circle like this. Now we have to sew around and secure this. As we do this, we're going to add another right angle unit here so that we can make our next unit, and it's easier to navigate simply because those 8-0s like to suck up between the 11-0s. So what we're going to do is we're going to go 11-0 pearl, 11-0, and pull our thread through. Then we're going to go into this 8-0 here. Make sure you have no slack in your thread. It's nice and tight. And then pick up 3 8-0 seed beads. And go into the opposite side of the 8-0 you're coming out of, right here. And I'm just going to hold on to it and pull those down. Then I'm going to go back into the 11-0 pearl, 11-0 on the extension that I created right there. And I'm going to hold on to it and pull that thread through. Then I'm going to go into the 8-0 that I'm attaching to. So this is what I have now. I'm now going to have to sew all the way up to this 8-0 so I can sew around my new unit here. So I'm going to go into, I'm coming out of the 8-0 on the bottom. I'm going to go through the 11-0 pearl, 11-0. Then I'm going to go into this 8-0 seed bead right here. Now I am going to pull my thread through. I'm going to turn my unit over, and you can see my first unit. It's very pretty. I think the sunset ones with the darker crystal and the darker pearl are going to be really pretty. But anyway, this is the one I designed with. So we are coming out of this 8-0 right here. Let's go up into the next 8-0, and we're going to sew all the way around this unit, one 8-0 at a time. And you notice I put my thumb and my finger over so that I can tug a little bit and not distort everything and adjust my tension as I do this. Okay, so I've sewn all the way around, and now we are going to put our pearl on this unit and then create another square. So we're coming out of this 8-0 seed bead here. We're going to pick up our pearl. We are going to cross over and go into the opposite side in the opposite bead in the unit. So straight across at a diagonal. I'm coming out this side, I'm going into that side on the other one. And I'm just going to pull this pearl up over the top of that little right angle weave unit, just like that. Now I'm going to go into this side bead right here. And I'm going to pull my thread through, make sure there's no slack, and again I'm going to pick up my 15-0 bronze seed beads, and I'm going to pick up 3 of them, a crystal, and 3 of the 15-0s. This is what I have on my needle. I am now going to go into the opposite side of the bead I'm coming out of. I'm going to hold on to it gently and pull everything through here. Now I'm going to reinforce this, and like I said, this is just so fumbly, so I'm trying to be very nice and neat, guys, but you know, I might not be. So I'm coming up through these 3 15-0s after coming out of that 8-0 that I'm attaching to. Then I'm going to go through the crystal. At this point, you want tension, but you don't want to pull your whole unit out of whack. So just gently establish your tension as you come through. Now we came out of the crystal, we're going to go down into the 3/15 on this side. Then we're going to go back into the 8/0 that we're attaching to. Now give a little tug, make sure everything's nice and neat and has no slack. Then we're coming out of this 8/0, we're going to go into the 8/0 that we attached this new unit to, right there above the pearl. My needle fell out, jeez Louise. Okay, we're going to go through that 8/0. Then we're going to go through the 8/0 on this side. Now we're going to pick up 3/15 seed beads, and a crystal, and 3/15 seed beads, just like this. And we're going to go into the opposite side of the 8/0 we're coming out of, just like this, and pull this crystal down like this. Now we're going to sew around, and we're going to secure the crystal by going up through these 3/15, just like this. Gently hold on to that crystal, give a gentle tug as you come up through the 15 and then go into the crystal here. Hold on to that crystal, pull your thread through, and give another gentle tug. And then go through the 15 on this side of the crystal. And just do everything very slowly, and you should be fine. Then we're coming out of these 15 we have to go back into the 8/0 we're attaching to, and then we'll draw it all together again, just like that. Now, in order to attach our other crystals to the crystals that are already attached, we have to come back up these 3/15 to get into our crystal. So we're coming out of the 8/0, we're going to go into these 3/15 on the side here. Then I'm holding onto my unit with the pearl there, and I'm just going to pull my thread, make sure everything is tight. I'm going to come up through this crystal here. I am then going to pick up an 11 seed bead and another crystal and an 11 seed bead, just like this. I am going to cross over and go into the seed bead on the opposite side, or excuse me, the crystal on the opposite side, and pull this up. Then I'm going to pick up an 11 and a crystal and an 11, and I'm using my bronze 11s, just like this. And I'm going to go from this crystal into this crystal, just straight across. Gently hold the unit and pull that in. Now we sew all the way around the entire unit to secure it. So I'm coming out of this crystal, I go into the 11, I'm coming out of this crystal, I go into, oops, I missed the 11. Let me see if I can do this without creating a huge mess. Nope, I did not. So let me go underneath this thread because I crossed threads. So see if I can get back to where I was. Anyway, also around it again. So what happened was my thread just got a little tied here. So I didn't go through this 11. So what I'm going to do to correct this problem, because I cannot get my thread out, sometimes they cross under the thread bridges already existing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into the crystal and I'm going to sew all the way around. So all you need to do after you put all your beads on is just sew all the way around. I'm going to come back through this bead again, just to make sure it's secure in there. and that will correct the issue I created for myself. Now, I'm coming out of this crystal here. Normally I would start up here, but I'm going to go ahead and start putting my 15 O's here. I'll just have to do a little bit more sewing to get where I need to be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up 3 15O seed beads, and I'm going to go into the next crystal, skipping over the 11O in the corner. Then again, I'll pick up 3 15O seed beads, and I will go over the 11O and into the next crystal. I'm going to turn my unit and pick up 3 15O seed beads, go into the crystal here, and then 3 11O seed beads, and I'll skip over this 11O and go into the crystal right here. So basically, I'm coming out right where I need to be anyway. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to bring my thread between the crystal and the gold 15O, and on the back side I'm going to go up through these 3 15O seed beads right here. Then I'm going to go into this 8O right here. I'm now ready to start the extension between my 2 units again. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up an 11O in gold, and then I'm going to pick up a pearl. These pearls are really difficult to pick up. There we go. And then I'm going to pick up an 11O, an 8O, an 11O in gold, and I'll show you what I'm picking up. Then a pearl, and an 11O. So this is what I have: 11O pearl, that looks blurry to me, 11O pearl, 11O 8O, 11O pearl, 11O, just like that. And let me back up just a little bit more. We are going to drop these down to the 8O we're coming out of, and then we're going to go into the opposite side of that 8O. And now we're going to sew through the 11O, pearl, 11O, and then in the 8O we'll make our next right angle weave. So right up these 3 here, and then I'm going to go into the 8O by itself here. Make sure you don't have any slack, and pick up 3 8O seed beads onto your needle. Just like this, and go into the opposite side of the 8O you're coming out of. And then just go into the 11O, pearl, 11O on this side here, and then back into the 8O you're attaching to. And you should have something that looks like this. Now, we're going to have to sew all the way back down to our new right angle weave unit. So we're going to go through this 11O, pearl, 11O here, go into the 8O between the 2 11Os here. We'll do one more unit since I messed up that last one, and we're just going to sew all the way around this right angle weave unit, 1 bead at a time, securing it and establishing the shape that we need. Okay, so I've gone all the way around. I'm coming back through the 8O I'm attaching to, just like this. Now I'm going to pick up a 4mm round pearl. I'm coming out of this side of this 8O. I'm going to cross over and go into the opposite 8O on the opposite side so that it's a diagonal. I'm going to push that pearl down, make sure I tug my thread so that there is no slack, and then I'm going to go into the 8-0 next to the one we're coming out of, right here. Then I'm going to pick up 3 15-0 seed beads and a crystal and 3 15-0 seed beads. I'm going to go back into the opposite side of the 8-0 I'm coming out of, and I'm going to pull this crystal down like this. Now again, we have to sew back up through these 15-0s. So it's fumbly. I'm just going to hold it the best I can, and the more length you get, the fumblier it gets here. So I'm just going to pull that up like that, and then I'm going to go into the crystal here. Then I'm going to go into the 3 15-0s on this side of the crystal here. I keep stabbing myself. That's not good. And then I'm going to go back into the 8-0 that I'm connecting to right here. Now I have to sew from this 8-0 into the 8-0 that we originally attached to right here. So you're just going to travel up to this 8-0. Make sure that your unit is nice and neat. So I got my thread crossed here. There we go. And now we're going to attach into this 8-0. So I'm going to go into the 8-0 on this side now. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick up 3 15-0 seed beads, a crystal, and 3 15-0s. And into the opposite side of the bead I'm coming out of. Pull this down. And adjust it. And again, I'm underneath that pearl thread. So I'm going to pull. Okay. For some reason that pearl just wants to be in my way today. Okay, now I'm going to go back into these 3 15-0 seed beads on this side. I'm going to pull this up. There we go. And I missed a 15-0, so I'm going to go into there. See, I told you this is the fumbliest darn project. And then we're going to go into the crystal, but it's worth it if you can just get through the fumbles. Now I'm going to go down this side, and that's why you need to hold on to your crystal, and then into the 8-0, there we go. Now it's nice and neat. So basically I'm just sewing around it, but I've had more issues when I was designing this. I was really considering not doing a video just because it's so weird. I mean, I don't know. But now I'm coming out of this 8-0. I'm going to go up these 3 15-0s here. It's just, I think it's because it's kind of saggy as you make this, because you have the extension in between, and it's just kind of wobbly and saggy, and it's just takes time. So just take a lot of time, come up through these 3 15-0 crystals here, or 3 15-0 seed beads here, and then into your crystal here. Now we're going to add our crystals between the crystals that are already existing. So pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a crystal, an 11-0. We're going to cross over into the crystal here, just like this, and pull these 3 beads down. And that's what you should have, like this. Now we're going to pick up an 11-0, a crystal, and an 11-0. Cross over into the crystal on this side, just like this. Pull this down, And then let's sew all the way around. So we're going to go 11-0, crystal, 11-0, 11-0, crystal, and 11-0. Give a little tug. And then 11-0, crystal, 11-0 on this side. And I'm going to just come all the way back up. So crystal and 11-0 here. And then through this crystal. Now I'm going to put my 15-0 seed beads over the 11-0s in the corner. So I'm going to pick up my 3 gold 15-0s. I'm coming out of this crystal. I'm going to go over the top of the 11-0 into the next crystal. Pull this down. Go into the next crystal. And again, go into the next crystal. And one more time. Go into the crystal. Okay, and just the crystal here. Now, we want to go into the 11-0 and the next crystal so we can travel down the 15-0s. So we're just going to go through this 11-0, this crystal, and you can see I'm just exiting the crystal, not the 15-0s. I'm going to pull my thread down between the crystal and the 15-0 here. Then I'm going to turn my piece over and I'm going to travel down these 3 15-0s on the back. Once you've done that, pull your thread through, go through this 8-0, and then you will begin your extension again. So you will pick up an 11-0, purl, come here, purl, 11-0, come here, 8-0, 11-0, and a purl, and an 11-0. Sorry guys, this is just a clumsy project. The beads don't want to pick up, and it's just one of those things. But like I said, it's worth it. So now I have 11-0, purl, 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, purl, 11-0, and I'm going to go into this crystal, or this 8-0. Now, I'm going to sew down these 3 beads and then go into this 8-0, make my next right angle weave, and start my next unit. We are going to go to length now. So you can back up the video and you can watch how to do one of the previous units if you still need some guidance. But from this point on, we're just going to work on our own until we have 11 squares, or you're about a ½ inch short of the length of bracelet that you want to achieve. Now, you're always going to take into consideration the size of your clasping also. I am going for a 7.5 inch bracelet. Now, you can see I've made my 11 squares. I have my extension pearls in between. This is why when you just lay it out or whatever, the squares look like they're kind of wonky and weird, but they are not. When you put them on the wrist, they spread out. That's the functionality of it, and you see the little pearls in between. So they will lay very nicely on the wrist. They just may not lay perfectly out on your bead mat. They may look like one's a little crooked, you know, just like that. So, and that's okay. Now what I've done is I've made my 11 squares. After I made my 11th square, I went ahead and made my extension like you would between each and every unit. So I have my 11-0, purl, 11-0, 8-0 situation going on here. I've sewn through it and secured it, I think. And now I'm going to come up through this 8/0 seed bead here. I'm going to go ahead and sew through it one more time just to make sure that it's nice and secure, because this is the end of my bracelet. So I'm going to go through this unit one more time. And yeah, because it looks like I have a single. I don't know, you guys, I'm tired. So it's been a long treasure bag week. Now I'm going to go up through 11/0, purl 11/0, and then into this 8/0. Now, instead of putting a right angle weave unit here, I am going to put on my clasping. So I'm going to kind of pull this 8/0 seed bead up a little bit away from those 11/0 so I can sew through it nicely. And now I'm going to pick up an 11/0 gold and an 8/0, and I'm going to drop them down to my piece here. And I have my piece upside down, which I guess doesn't really matter. I can turn it over. And now I'm going to get the other side of my clasp. I'm going to take the circle off and just open the fold over part, because it's just easier to deal with if I don't have the circle on. So I'm just going to open it, take this out, close it, and then I can attach that, and then I can put the circle back on and use my clasp. So now I'm coming out of this 8/0. I'm going to go up through the clasp loop, drop it down to the 8/0, go through just the 8/0 seed bead, hold on to the 8/0, and pull my clasping down. Just like that. Now I am going to go through the other side with an 11/0. So I'm going to pick up an 11/0 and attach the other side. So, well, come here, 11/0. Come here. So I am starting on this side, so I'm going to go into this side. So you want to go into the opposite side that you started in that 8/0 seed bead. And now you should have something that looks like this. A little triangular looking situation here. Now I'm going to sew back up through the 11/0, 8/0, arrange my clasp, and go through it. And then back down into the 8/0. And the 11/0 on this side. It's like this. And then into the 8/0 I've attached to. I'm going to do that 2 more times, then we will come back and we will tie off. Okay, so I have secured my clasping, and now I'm coming out of the 8/0 seed bead that I attached my clasping to. I'm going to turn this over. I'm coming out of the 8/0 here. I'm going to go down into this 11/0 and purl here. And then I'm going to go into this 8/0 seed bead here. And then I'm going to get you real close. We're going to go underneath this thread bridge between this 8/0 and this 8/0 in our original right angle weave. I'm just going to go under that little thread bridge there and pull the thread through, make a nice little loop, make sure everything's going to go between the beads, and pull a knot down between those 2 8/0s right there. Then I'm just going to sew into the next 8/0, and then the next one also. And on this side, between the 8/0s, I'm going to do another, I'm going to grab underneath that thread bridge there, and I'm going to tie another knot. I'm going to pull a loop, go through the loop, and pull a knot down on that thread bridge. Now I can go down into, I can just sew around this again, or I can go down into the next extension. I think I'm going to go down into the extension here, just to make sure that I'm not all secured on just one unit. So if something happens, it'll be, you won't lose more than one unit. Now we're going to go through the 11-0, the purl, the 11-0, the 8-0 here, and then again between these beads, I'm going to grab that thread bridge. Maybe I'll go into this 8-0 and grab the thread bridge over here. It's a little hard to get a hold of, so I'm going to go into this next 8-0. I'm just sewing around the original right angle weave units and utilizing the thread bridge between the 8-0s for my knot tying space here. And then I'm going to go through one more 8-0 here. And I am going to then cut my thread. And I'm leaving a tag of thread, a pretty good one, so that I can melt a nice blob with my lighter and create another knot with that. So I'm just going to blob that in just like that. And then if you haven't cut your tail off yet on the other side, do that. Now I'm going to grab my circle part of my clasp, and I'm going to open this, and I'm going to put this on here and close it. Then I can just, let me open this side first. See if I can do this on camera, sort of. Well, I'm moving my hand out of the way so you can't see it, but I'm gonna try really hard to do this all by my little self. There we go. So I've got the fold over clasp in there, and there we go. Now, let me move all this stuff out of the way, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. So here is my bracelet, and you can see as I have it on my arm and it's in a circle here, these little extensions between expose the little pearls in between each unit. Makes it really, really pretty. And there's my clasping, looks nice. I think it turned out just absolutely gorgeous. And I think if you're doing the sunset, I think that the crystals, I think those would be so gorgeous. I'm going to have to make myself one. I'm just running short on time. I wanted to get some tutorials started for you guys. I just got done sending out all of the treasure bags and stuff, so I'm trying to catch up on everything. My website needs to be restocked, the whole 9 yards. So I only made one color scheme, but these are going to be absolutely beautiful in the same here. And I think I'd probably just use gold beads. You might want to use the bronze too, but whatever you'd like. And make exactly the same bracelet, doing exactly the same thing with this color scheme. Or you can use, like I said, I was just playing with the units, trying to figure out what would work. And this is a cuboid, this is a fire polish bead, and this turns out really pretty too. And you can see the extension in between. It's a little less bold on the hand, but just as pretty. I guess I should back off there. Just as pretty. So if you did not get a treasure bag and you cannot get the column beads, do not feel left out, because you can do this with bicones, you can do it with a 4mm fire polish bead, and you can do it with a 4mm cuboid crystal. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. There will be a lot more coming. There was a lot of beads in these 2 bags, and the next one I will design with sunset. And we'll just keep moving on. Sometimes I do both color schemes in one design, and sometimes I don't. This one, it's more time consuming, so I didn't want to make 2, but the process is exactly the same. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.